Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County presents Change Lives for Good with your host, Greg Kefferly.
For months, we have seen grim images of refugees fleeing the Middle East and Africa and around the world, fleeing to Europe and other places for a safe haven, fleeing war, violence, political disruption, economic disruption. Among these refugees are children and youth who are separated from their parents, maybe because their parent has been killed in war, or they're separated in camps, or for other reasons. What happens to these children and youth? And what happens when they arrive here in Santa Clara County? Hello and welcome to Change Lives for Good. I'm your host, Greg Kepferly, CEO of Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. And today we're talking about refugee foster youth and Catholic Charities' Refugee Foster Care Program. And with me in this conversation is social worker Bridget Balahaja, who is with Catholic Charities Refugee Foster Care Program. Welcome, Bridget.
Hi.
And also Stephanie French, who is, along with her husband, a foster parent for our foster care program. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
So, as we look at the issue of refugee foster youth, how does Catholic Charities help these youth? What does the Refugee Foster Care Program do, Bridget?
So that's a really good question. Refugee foster care serves unaccompanied minors from all over the world. So we're talking about kids who have lost their parents due to a variety of reasons. Some have lost their parents because of war, conflict, political corruption. Others still have their parents and have had to leave because of abuse, domestic violence. And some of their parents were lost in flight when they were actually leaving their country. So it's my job as a social worker and as part of refugee foster care to help these unaccompanied minors come to the United States and find loving, caring homes for them. And then also beyond that, to follow them throughout their progress here in the United States to make sure that they are getting the educational and other independent living skills that they need to become a thriving member of society.
So how does a youth get here, and what happens when the youth arrives?
Great questions. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that they can get here. Some come on planes, others come by boat, others come on foot. We've had many youth who have come from Central America on foot, who have literally walked their way up to the border. We have had others who have come out of refugee camps, and still others who have come from other protected areas. So there's a long referral process where either the United Nations or other guardians will make recommendations that they are resettled into a safe country. We get those bids, best interest determination reports, on a kiddo and their profile of what they're looking for. And most often they're looking for a solid education and a loving family. And then we take those kiddos and we help them find their new place. So to answer your question of where they're coming from, we get kids from the Middle East, we get kids from Africa, we get kids from Asia, we get kids from Central America, we get kids from all over the world.
Wow, that's very impressive. So, but to receive these children, we need to make sure that there are enough foster families to welcome them. And so, as part of that, I just want to ask you, what motivated you and your husband to say yes to fostering one of these youth?
So my husband and myself, we feel extremely fortunate to have the life that we do here in the US. And we feel that it's a social obligation for us to reach out and help people that need support, especially when those needing that support are children. So when we got to find out about the Catholic Charities Foster Care Program, and we had all the details, for us it was a no-brainer. It just was the right thing to do.
Wow, that's incredibly brave and very generous. So what support did you get from the program, or are you getting from the program?
So there are several channels of support that we get from the foster care program. The first one, and which I think is the most important, is the social worker. And coincidentally, Bridget happens to be the social worker for my daughter. And so that's a really important relationship for us to build. I also get support from the education program coordinator, and she gets involved with enrolling the kid at school, anything to do with schedules at school. We also have, I think she's called the parent advocate, and that's a new role that's just started. And she's there to help us, the parents, because there are days when things are challenging, and we have someone that we can turn to, pick up that phone, and just say, hey, you know what? I need some help. And so I've got that support there. And we also do get some financial support from the organization. And I think that's there to ensure the basic needs of the child are met. The clothing, the food, the housing, and also the foster family is not hit hard suddenly financially by having a new child on board. So that goes a long way to helping.
Right. Yeah. So you made a bold move in accepting a foster youth.
Yeah.
Add on top of that the foster youth is a refugee,
yes.
Which means there's a certain level of trauma there.
Yes.
And as we look at the program, what are the types of issues that are pretty typical for refugee youth that you're seeing as they come across, and why is that?
Yeah. So, I think that while every youth is individual and is going to have their own very personal story, there are commonalities that all of our youth experience. There's the trauma of the fact that they wouldn't be in our program had they not lost a parent for a variety of different circumstances. So there's that loss. There is not only the loss of the parent, but the loss of the culture, the country, and then the process of coming to the United States. All of our kids have had their first day. They've all experienced what it's like to be that kid in the classroom that doesn't speak any English, that is 100% new to this country, to the idea of having an American family. And they're all nervous when it first starts. They don't know what to expect. Many of them have misconceptions about what the United States is going to be like, but they all overcome those challenges, as they have with all the other challenges that came before that.
Yeah. So, so foster youth, refugee, and for you, teenager.
Yes.
Yes.
So, what was that like? All of a sudden, you're mom to a teen.
Yes. And that was one of the things that I was slightly apprehensive about. I think the only thing I was slightly apprehensive about. But having been in the program for about a year now, I can tell you that I had nothing to worry about because of the support structure within the program. You do have, you can always reach out, and there's always someone there to help us out. So that is no longer an issue for us. In fact, it's pretty exciting now. Yeah. And I've got a 7-year-old, and by the time he gets to be a teen now, I've got everything down, so I know what to expect.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
it really is a team effort too. That we're always looking for loving families like Stephanie and Emmanuel who are willing to open their hearts and their homes. But we do recognize that parenting a teenager is incredibly different. Yeah. And you're talking about teenagers who have had multiple layers of trauma, and so that's why we're here to support clinically, but also to support them in just what it's like to take in a new youth and to have a new addition in their lives.
Yeah. So when the youth ages out of foster care, that's age 18, is that right?
Well,
or
so
no?
it's changed now.
Okay.
In California now, they're able to stay into foster care up until 24. But our program is a little bit special because we're able to have an added year on top of that where they can get financial assistance up until they're 25. So usually we're able to follow these kids past college.
That is terrific. And speaking of college, do these kids end up going to college?
Oh, yes. Most of our kids will end up in at least a 2-year program, if not a 4-year program. We've had, this is college acceptance season, and we've had multiple kids. Some kids have been accepted to UC Berkeley. We've got acceptance letters from Stanford, Cal Poly, other private universities. And I think that speaks volumes to the type of wonderful youth that come through these programs and the resiliency that they possess, the fact that they have been given so many challenges in their short amount of life and overcome each and every one of them and then gone beyond that and really gone the extra mile to perform.
That's incredible that you use the word resiliency, and it seems like that's what's so encouraging, that the resiliency of the youth, coupled with the compassion and the care of the foster family and the wraparound support from Catholic Charities, it's a recipe for success.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's really
Absolutely.
exciting. So as we look at the foster youth as they come in, what was your first day or first days with the foster youth like?
So, we go to the airport, we pick them up, and we drive them home. And with our experience, kids did not speak English. So that's the first challenge, is the communication is really the hardest part of it, because we don't have a common language. However, what you quickly learn is that all it takes is, gestures and a little bit of effort on both parts, and you can find a way to communicate.
Oh, totally.
So, it's not easy. It's not easy those first weeks, but it really is worth it in the end.
That's wonderful. So you have a sense of oh my gosh, I'm nervous about accepting this
Yeah.
youth or this child, and the youth is also nervous.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. Because
And
they don't know what to expect, and they are in such a foreign environment, and with the language barrier, they cannot express themselves.
Yeah.
And for them, they're coming into a family who already are a family unit. They're the outsiders, so we have to do everything we can to, make them feel welcome and feel comfortable within our environment. And that takes time. It does take time. But the first few days, there are challenges, but nothing that's a showstopper. And, I would say I do it over and over again.
Wonderful. We'll be right back with Change Lives for Good and our conversation on refugee foster youth.
Refugee foster care. Change how life turns out for them, for you. Our mission, the Refugee Foster Care Program, accepts unaccompanied minors from around the world who have refugee or asylee status and resettles them in foster families throughout the Bay Area. About refugee youth from overseas refugee camps, forced out of their home countries due to war and conflict, orphaned or separated from their parents. More about refugee youth. They are unaccompanied asylees, trafficking victims, and other minors who are placed in foster families. The difference between refugee youth and an asylee. A refugee seeks safety in a second country and is given their status by the United Nations or the Office of Refugee Resettlement. An asylee is granted asylum from their country by a U.S. immigration judge. Services for refugee youth includes case management, monthly allowance, wellness services, independent living skills program, and cultural, educational, and recreational activities. Becoming a refugee foster care parent can be any religious faith, race, or age over 21, married or single, currently have children, or have no children at all. Services for foster parents. Close case management, support through licensing, and for as long as you have your foster child. Monthly training sessions, monthly financial reimbursement, including housing, food, and clothing.
Catholic Charities works to end poverty by helping families and individuals get the tools they need to become more self-reliant. It offers a hand up rather than a handout through a wide range of services and serves more than 54,000 people each year of all cultures and beliefs.
Hello and welcome back to Change Lives for Good. Today we're talking about refugee foster youth and Catholic Charities Refugee Foster Care Program here in Santa Clara County. And with me are Bridget Balahaja, who's our social worker with Refugee Foster Care, and a foster mom, Stephanie French. And welcome back.
Thank you.
So one of the programs that we have for youth aging out of the foster care program is the independent living program. So could you tell a little bit about how that program works?
For sure. So like I mentioned earlier, one of the main points of what we're trying to do is make sure that these individuals, these refugee minors who enter our program as teens, are successful as adults in the United States and that they become thriving members of society. And so what we do is, even after they've aged out of a foster family and they say, okay, mom, dad, I'm ready to become an independent person. I want to either move on to the college campus dorms, or I want to move out into the community. We help them, social workers help them, and then we also have an independent living coordinator who helps them to find jobs, earn those job skills, get into the schools that they want. And we follow them throughout the end of their program, so up until they're 25, to make sure that all of their goals that they want for themselves are being worked on. And we make those into little attainable baby steps so that they can achieve that major goal somewhere later on in life. And we're able to provide them with that financial assistance that they need, and the guidance and the mentoring that they need to become successful.
Well, this sounds like a very robust program that's, really strong wraparound and support for the kids and the families. But I would imagine sometimes it doesn't always work. So what would you say would be the hardest part of your job?
Yeah, the hardest part of my job is when families fall apart. And sometimes that does happen. We don't always know who this youth is when they're coming over. We don't really get a lot of information about their personality, and sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes a youth is placed in a family where there's differences of personalities, or maybe there's behaviors, or maybe it's just not the right fit. And when that does happen, we do always have a backup plan, and we have never let a youth fall through the gaps. But it is hard to watch that, because you invest so much hope in thinking that this is going to work and that this is going to be a perfect match. And when it falls apart, there is repair work in making sure that that child still knows that they are loved and that they are appreciated and wanted, and that there is hope for them in the future.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So the flip side of that question is, what is your favorite part of your job?
Yeah, that's much more fun to talk about. My favorite part is watching families come together. So families like Stephanie and her daughter, watching them bond and grow. And her daughter has only been here for a very short amount of time, only a couple of months, and watching from day one how when she came off that plane and met her, she called her mama. How she was feeding her that first night and wanted to give her hugs, and the exchange of love between them that has grown over the next several months. It's amazing to watch, and to be able to find parents who have been wanting a new member of their family, and youth who have been needing that love and that support that only a parent can provide for so long. That's beautiful.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear.
It is.
So, Stephanie, what have you learned from this experience?
So it's actually, the list is pretty long in terms of, because this is such an enriching experience. But, just to talk about a couple of the things, the first thing I had to, and my husband had to learn, was we had to become parents to teenagers overnight. So we have a 7-year-old son, and so we know, what a 7-year-old, to parent a 7-year-old, what it takes. But to suddenly have a teenager, that was a huge learning curve for us, and it continues. We learn every day. There are things that happen on a daily basis that we think, hang on, are we dealing with a teenager here or just a behavior? So, there's a lot for us to learn. But more importantly, I think what we both have learned from this experience is, no matter where you bring these kids from, no matter what their cultural background, their ethnic background, it's very possible, with a little bit of empathy and a lot of understanding, you can live together as a family.
Yeah.
It's just so possible, and we've done it. And I'm so glad that this program is here to do this. It's just been an amazing learning experience for us.
That's wonderful. So, as you think about moments of joy in this learning experience, what has given you the most joy?
So, for me and for our daughter right now, she's been through a lot. She's endured a lot. But I'll tell you what gives me a lot of joy is, she could just be sitting and watching television, and I'd hear her giggling. She's got this infectious giggle, and I'm busy cooking, and I just hear this giggle. And to me, that's the best sound I can hear. That really, really is just the best sound I can hear. Because knowing what she's been through and the resilience and strength she's showing right now, and just to know she can sit there for those few moments, forget the past, forget all her worries, and just giggle.
Yeah.
And be a kid. What more can a parent ask for?
Wow. So how can people help? How can people become involved? I want to sign up right now.
Great, you can. We're always looking for more foster families, always. Because, as it is, we can't accept more refugee youth unless we have foster families that are willing to open not only their homes, but their hearts to these kiddos. So in the next year, we're hoping to expand. We've got a lot of kids that really need homes and really need loving families, and we're specifically looking for about 33 families.
33
still.
families. And
Yep.
is that just Santa Clara County?
Oh no, we serve all 9 counties of the Bay Area, so we're going all the way up to San Francisco, out to Concord, down to Monterey. And yes, we will drive out to see you. So there's a lot of support there.
Okay, so in addition to the foster families, are there other ways people can help?
Oh, definitely. So sometimes people are like, well, I'm not ready to have a child of my own. You can become a host family. So what that looks like is maybe we have a more independent youth who has been here for a little while, has adjusted to American culture, and it wants to test out independent living, but still needs a little bit of guidance. So maybe you're willing to rent a room at low cost, $400, $500 a month. And then we can have the kid live with you. The kiddo gets the guidance of an adult. Or maybe you're not even willing to have a child in your house yet. Maybe that's too much of a commitment. There's other ways that you can help. Being a mentor. We're always looking for people, whether you're a college student that says, okay, I can tutor or I can guide a person through this college process, whether you're an adult and you want to help our kids understand American culture a little bit more. Or maybe you want to be completely hands-off. We're always looking for financial donations, computers in specific. We always need those.
Computers, okay.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of extra for the kids to do special
Definitely.
things, right?
We have kids, like I said earlier on in the program, our kids are incredibly giving, and we have kids that want to go and do service missions abroad. They want to go to different countries, but some even want to stay here in the United States. I just had one of my clients who went up to Oregon and was working at a reservation and was cleaning up that area, and he needed a little bit of money to help him go and do some good for other people. Those are the kinds of donations that we're looking for.
So one of the things that you're telling me is that the youth that come through this program want to give back.
Oh gosh, yes.
And they want to give back to whomever is in need, right?
Yes, because they've been there.
Yeah.
They have literally been there, and they understand what it's like to be without, and they want to give back. And it's everybody. They discriminate against no one. Our kids give back to Americans who are down on their luck. They give back to communities outside of America, and they are always open to giving.
You know, what an inspiration they are. I go back to that word of resiliency,
Yes.
and it's even more than resiliency. I see that it's compassion that keeps multiplying over and over,
Yes,
that keeps building on
definitely.
itself.
Yes.
The love and care
Yeah.
you and your husband give, the compassion and skilled service that Bridget and the rest of your team give as well, and then the giving from the youth themselves.
Yes.
I mean, that's a very powerful experience. So finally, Stephanie, what would you say to someone considering becoming a foster parent to a refugee youth?
What I would say to them is they have absolutely nothing to lose, but so much to gain from this experience. It's an enriching experience that they're not likely to get anywhere else.
Yeah.
So if they're on the fence, I'd say make that call.
So make that call.
Yes.
So who can they call?
Claire Collins. So you can look us up or just Google refugee foster care. It will come right up. And we are ready and willing to help you. There's a short certification process that you have to go through, but we also have loving foster parents who are willing to talk to you about it if you need a little bit more information.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So you heard it here. These people are changing lives for good. I'm just overwhelmed. So I just want to say, if you want to change lives for good and become a foster parent to a refugee youth, call Catholic Charities. We're there. It'll change your life for good. So until next time, remember to speak up, reach out, and change lives for good.
Refugee foster care. Change how life turns out for them, for you. Our mission: the Refugee Foster Care Program accepts unaccompanied minors from around the world who have refugee or asylee status and resettles them in foster families throughout the Bay Area. About refugee youth from overseas refugee camps, forced out of their home countries due to war and conflict, orphaned or separated from their parents. More about refugee youth. They are unaccompanied asylees, trafficking victims, and other minors who are placed in foster families. The difference between refugee youth and an asylee. A refugee seeks safety in a second country and is given their status by the United Nations or the Office of Refugee Resettlement. An asylee is granted asylum from their country by a U.S. immigration judge. Services for refugee youth includes case management, monthly allowance, wellness services, independent living skills program, and cultural, educational, and recreational activities. Becoming a refugee foster care parent can be any religious faith, race, or age over 21, married or single, currently have children, or have no children at all. Services for foster parents. Close case management, support through licensing, and for as long as you have your foster child. Monthly training sessions, monthly financial reimbursement, including housing, food, and clothing.